सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ श्री गणेशाय नमः। ॐ श्री सरस्वत्यै नमः। ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं रामाय रामभद्राय रामचन्द्राय वेधसे रघुनाथाय नाथाय सीतायाः पतये नमः। शुकासारिखे पूर्णवैराग्यजाचे वसिष्ठापरिज्ञानयोगेश्वराचे कवी वाल्मिका सारिखा मान्य ऐसा नमस्कार माझा तया रामदासा। गणाधीश जो ईश सर्वा गुणांचा मुळारंभ आरंभ तो निर्गुणाचा। नमो शारदा मूळचत्वार वाचा गमो पंथ आनंत या राघवाचा। जय जय रघुवीर समर्थ। Towards the end of the text, Samarth Ramdas Swami is explaining the nature of that Nirguna Brahma. Saguna Brahma was explained, devotion to that Saguna Brahma, Bhagavan was also explained elaborately. Now that Nirguna Nirakara Brahman, what is the nature? We saw in the last session, verse 191, he said, unless you give up the identification with the body, the self cannot be realized. Meaning, if I think myself to be the jiva or if I think myself to be the body, I cannot know myself as the pure consciousness. Both these notions, understandings, knowledge cannot coexist. And therefore, unless I give up my wrong notion about the self, I cannot gain the right understanding of the self. And therefore, as long as that me-pana is there, arrogance is there, ego is there, Parabrahma na akade. Brahman cannot be realized. Why? Because unless ignorance has totally gone, realization will not happen. And ignorance itself is coming as this jiva bhava, considering myself to be the jiva. It is ignorance only, different form of ignorance only. So unless that goes away by knowledge, realization of the self will never happen. He says, Kalpanta Kali, even at the end of Kalpa, it will not happen. That is to say that it is impossible. Without removing ignorance totally, without giving up identification, without gaining the self-knowledge, realization will never happen. Now, if mind tries to know this Brahman, tries to know this self, what happens? Mana na kale, na dhale rupa jaate. Nature of this Brahman cannot be imagined by mind, cannot be known by mind, cannot be understood by mind. Why? Even when we say that I am meditating on that Brahman, that meditation is not the dualistic meditation where I am there, there is something other than me and I am meditating on that. that kind of meditation is not possible in Vedanta. Yesterday was meditation day, no? World Meditation Day recently started, this year only, I think. So many people, getting excited, they may do meditation, but you are meditating on what? I am meditating on light, very good. Meditating on sound, very good. I am meditating on nothing, wow. But in Vedanta, you have to meditate upon what? Upon the nature of one's own self, not something that is different from me. So this is a Advaitic meditation. Duje Veenate Dhyana Sarvottamate. You can't meditate on that Sarvottama Parabrahma with the thought of duality. If you say that, okay, I cannot meditate on it, but you point out that Brahman, then I will meditate. That cannot be even pointed out. Why? Because there is no example of Brahman. Taya khunate hina drishtanta hai. You can't point it out using any example. Why? Because no example can describe Brahman. There is no correct example. Having said that, mind you, there are many examples we use. If you read Atma Bodha, Shankaracharya's Prakarana Grantha, completely filled with examples. Viveka Chudamani also, so many examples he has taken. But is there any one example which can completely describe Brahman? No. There is no. So what are all the examples that we are using it for? We are taking all the examples to understand what it is not. And that is why many examples are taken. To explain one wrong notion and to say that this is not Brahman, one example. To explain another wrong notion, another example. To explain third wrong notion, third example. Different examples are taken to remove the wrong notion of Brahman. But to establish the right understanding of Brahman, no example will work. Right? And therefore, the Vedas, the scriptures, all of them take to the method of neti, negation. Oh, you got this, that is not Brahman. But now I got this, that is also not Brahman. Now I have got this, that is also not Brahman. Why? Because you have got it. If you have got it, then that is not it. So when you drop everything that you get, then when you drop yourself, what remains, that is Brahman. But what is that Brahman? Can't explain. Now give you some example, cannot give any example. Right? Tethe sanga nisanga donhi na sahe. You can't even call that Brahman is with duality or without duality. Whether it is Dvaita or Advaita. Brahman is neither Dvaita nor Advaita. The philosophy is that of Advaita Brahman. But Brahman is not Advaita. Why? See, the word Advaita means what? Where there is no duality. Advaita. How can you explain something that is Advaita by the word Advaita? Why? Because there is no concept of duality. Then why are you saying that there is no duality? Say, I will give you an example. Suppose 20-25 years back, I hope you remember, there used to be forms, etc., bank forms and different forms used to be there. And they will ask you full name, write in capitals. You have to write full name. Then they will ask gender, male, female, other. Remember? Male, female, other. You have to tick. Most of the times they will only ask male or female. They will not write other. Why? Because that question does not arise in many people's mind. By putting that other, you are creating the question in people's mind. That is there something more than male and female? You understand? By calling Brahman Advaita, you are creating a doubt. Is it really Advaita? Because if it is, why are you calling it as non-duality? If it is really if there is only one thing, why are you saying there is no second? There is a sambhavana, there is a possibility of second. No, that possibility you are bringing by calling it as Advaita. Why are you bringing that? So Brahman is neither dual nor non-dual. Brahman is one. Where is the question of non-dual? That's why it is said, Tete Sanga Nisanga Donhi na sahe. Nave janata nenata devarana. Neither the knowledge nor the ignorance can be there in that Brahman. Naye varnita Veda Shastra Purana, and therefore Veda Shastra Puranas, all the scriptures cannot completely describe that Brahman. Nave drishya, it is not something that can be seen. Adrishya, it is not something that is invisible or unseen. Sakshi Tayacha, you can't even call it as witness. Because again, for it to become witness, there should be something other than it to witness. There is nothing other than Brahman. How can you call even Brahman as witness? Yes, as compared to all the things that are happening, it is a witness. But that is only a relative description of that person. To understand this point completely, we should do one exercise. Very interesting exercise it is. Okay? What is the exercise? The exercise is, you have to introduce yourself without taking into account anything that is not you. What? You have to introduce yourself without taking into account anything that is not you. Try. My name is... Name is to body. Are you the body? No. Oh, so I am not the body, then I can't have name. Okay. I am born in... who is born? Body is born. I am not the body. So I can't even tell about that. My father is... you can't have father. Body has father. You are not the body. You cannot have father. Try to describe yourself without taking into account anything that is not you. Our entire description of ourselves is with respect to something else. My name is so and so, my age is so and so, I am from this place, this gender, that gender, this nationality, this religion, and I have studied this much and did this degree, and after that, that degree, and I stayed here and then I stayed there, and I have this much years of experience in this post, in this company. Everything related to my body, mind, intellect, which I am not. What will you call Brahman without calling or without taking into account anything other than it? We cannot say anything about it. So you can't even call it a Sakshi. Of course, it is not Drishya because it cannot be seen. It is not Adrishya because it exists. And it is not Sakshi because there is nothing that it needs to witness. There is nothing. Therefore, this Brahman cannot be known. It has to be realized as a very core experience. You can't even call it as experience in the way we experience all other things, because all other experiences are using the mind. The mind is experiencer, the mind is experiencing. Brahman cannot be even experienced by mind. It is so intrinsic to me that my body, mind or intellect do not take part in that experience, and therefore we call it as realization with R capital. Or sometimes we will say direct experience, aparokshanubhuti, direct experience. That is Brahman. Shruti, Nenati, Antatyacha. Even the Vedas have not found the end of Brahman. End of Brahman means even the Vedas have not completely understood and explained Brahman. They cannot. It's not because there is some fault in the Vedas. No, there is no fault in the Vedas. Brahman is such that it cannot be completely understood or explained. What can Vedas do? Vedas try their methods completely to describe, but it cannot be explained. That is Brahman. Now, based on this, a seeker asked question. This Brahman which you say you cannot explain, vase hridayi devato kona kaisa. You said that that Deva, that God, lives in your heart, resides in your heart. Who is that? Kaisa? Who? How is he? Puse adare sadhaku prashna aisa. Seeker is asking this question with lot of respect. Dehe takita deva kothe rahato. When the body is falling, when death comes and body falls, where does this Deva stay? Parimaguta thava kothe pahato. And then later on takes up another body. How? In the last session we were seeing that it appears to be that the question is about Jiva. But actually the question is not about Jiva. The question is about that pure consciousness. And therefore the answer you see, we saw it in the last session, Vase hridayi devato jana aisa. O seeker, understand that that supreme God who resides in your heart is of this nature. What nature? Nabhache pari vyapaku janat aisa. That supreme consciousness is like space, vyapaka, all pervasive. Sada sanchala, it's always present in everything. Yetana zataka, and therefore he doesn't come or go. He can't come or go. Why? Because he is already there in everything all the time. There is no question of coming and going. Taya veena kothe rita thava. And without that consciousness, there is nothing in the world. That is the consciousness which we are talking about. It's all pervasive like space. It's already present in everything at all times. It cannot come anywhere, go anywhere. And if it is not there, nothing can exist. This is that consciousness. Now he continues further. Let us read verse 196. Nabhi vavare ja anu renu kahi rita thavaya raghave veena nahi taya pahata tochi zale tethe laksha alaksha sarvai budale. Jai Jai Raghuveer Samartha. Nabhi vavare ja anu renu kahi. Anu means, anu renu is small atoms. Anu means atom. Whatever small atom also exists in the entire space, in the entire cosmos, rita thavaya raghave veena nahi. It cannot exist if there is no consciousness in it. Here the word Raghava, Rama, etc. are used in the meaning of that consciousness. Samarth Ramdas Swami, for him, he is, Sri Rama is the consciousness. So he says, without that consciousness, there cannot even exist smallest of atoms. Anu renu na kahi. Taya pahata tochi zale. If you try to experience that Brahman, what happens is, trying to capture that Brahman, you become that Brahman. Taya pahata, seeing it again and again, tochi zale, you become that. Tethe laksha alaksha sarve budale. And there, concept of seeing and not seeing, witnessing, everything vanishes. Bhagavan Shankaracharya gives an example in Atma Bodha to explain this point. Bheje Bhramara Kitavata. Very famous example of wasp. Wasp is a kind of insect. What this wasp does is, it captures a very small Kita, worm, small worm. It captures and puts that worm into a hole, creates a hole in the wall or in wood or anything, and puts this worm inside the hole and sits at the mouth of that hole. The moment worm tries to move, it gives one sting. It stings once. So the worm, completely stunned, keeps looking at the wasp without movement. Because if it moves, it will get a sting. And the nature is such that the worm, looking at wasp continuously with absolute attention, becomes wasp. That small little worm which can only crawl on the ground now can fly, go to the flowers and take the nectar. How? By that unwavering attention at the wasp. It becomes wasp. Similarly, Shankaracharya says this Jiva, if gives up all other activities and focuses on Brahman, becomes Brahman. Actually, you can't even call it as becoming Brahman. Why? Because it is Brahman. What it is only doing is it is giving up all the wrong notions. It is already Brahman. It doesn't have to become anything. That's why no example can completely explain it. Yes, worm has to transform itself into wasp. But here that is also not to be done. Jiva doesn't have to become Brahman. Jiva is Brahman. Just has to understand it. Realize it. Taya pahata pahata tochi jale. That is what is happening here. So two things he is telling. Number one, in the entire cosmos, whatever exists, whether it is a small atom or a huge planet, everything exists because of Brahman. If Brahman is not there, nothing can even exist. Tulsidas ji, in the beginning of Ramacharitmanas, one verse he writes in Sanskrit to offer his salutations to Sri Rama. Before Ramayana he begins, and what a verse it is. And there he says, Yanmaya vashavarti vishwamakilam brahmadi devasuraha yat sattvat amrushaiva bhati sakalam rajjau yatha her brahma. Yat sattvat. Because of whose existence, everything that does not exist also appears to be existing. Amrusha eva sakalam bhati. Though everything is non-existent, it appears to be existing because of whose existence? To that Sri Rama I offer my salutations. Yat pada plavamekam hi bhavam bodhe sthitirshavatam tam ashesha karana param ramakhyam isham harim aham vande. Vandeham. So what is he saying? Yat sattvat, because of whose existence everything that does not exist also appears to be existing. Means what? Watch. Watch does not exist, but it appears to be existing. Why? Because there is Brahman, which is the substratum of the watch. If the substratum is not there, watch cannot exist. In the entire world, even the smallest of atom exists because there is existence. Because there is that consciousness, because there is that Brahman, which is the substratum of that atom. Without that consciousness, not even an atom can exist. That Brahman I am. Know your real worth. Many people spend their entire life proving to others that they are worthy. But even they have not understood their complete worth. Who am I? I am that consciousness which is the substratum of the entire universe. If I am not there, even an atom in universe cannot exist. The problem that we do is, we think when the Vedanta is telling I am the substratum, you think that this body, Brahmachari, Ved, Chaitanya, that are not that. That is not the substratum of the universe. The body is not the substratum of the universe or the mind. It can never be. But that consciousness, which is the substratum of the universe, that is real me. That is what I am. That is what he is saying. When I try to realize this Brahman, what happens is, I become Brahman. To explain how meditation takes place or how that realization knowledge takes place, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to give one very beautiful example. He used to say that one salt doll wanted to measure the depth of the ocean. And therefore that salt doll entered the ocean. What happened to the salt doll? She became the ocean. From one angle you will say, oh, the salt doll disappeared. Salt doll did not disappear. Salt doll became the ocean. If you want to know Brahman, you have to become Brahman. And here become doesn't mean literally become. Why? Because you already are that Brahman. You have to realize that I am that Brahman. So taya pahata pahata tochi jale. When you try to watch, when you try to know, when you try to understand that Brahman, you become Brahman. You realize that it is your own self. Tethe laksha alaksha sarve budale. Now there in that state of pure consciousness, there is nothing that is seen or there is nothing that is unseen or invisible, visible. Such difference, such distinction does not exist. This is the ultimate truth. This Brahman is me. Right? That is the main point. Continues further. Let us see. Verse 197. नभा सारिखे रूपया राघवाचे मनी चिंतिता मूळ तूटे भवाचे तया पाहता देह बुद्धी उरेना सदा सर्वदा आर्तपोटी पुरेना. जय जय रघुवीर समर्थ. नभा सारिखे रूपया राघवाचे. Nature of this Sri Rama, nature of this Brahman is like space. All pervasive. That's what is the aspect that Samarth Ramdas Swami is trying to explain. Mani chintita moola tute bhavache. When you try to meditate on it in your mind, meditate on Brahman in your mind, moola tute bhava, bhavache moola, bhavache of samsara. Moola, cause of samsara, that is ajnana, ignorance, tute, it breaks. When you try to meditate on Brahman, I am Brahman, that ajnana, which is the root of samsara, gets destroyed. Taya pahata, and when you have that direct experience, now here don't say that taya pahata means with eyes, you are not seeing it with eyes. When you have that direct experience of Brahman, deha buddhi urena, no identification with the body or feeling that I am the body can remain. Sada sarvada artapoti purena. He says, till this kind of experience of Brahman happens, till this aparokshanubhuti, this direct experience, realization happens, you are never satisfied, you are not fully happy, you are not completely content. Only with this experience can you become complete. Earlier also we had seen this topic right at the beginning of Manache Shlok, where he said that everybody's life has got some kind of incompleteness. Something is not fully there. For some people it can be money, for some people it can be education, for some people it can be family, for some people it can be peace. But everybody has something that is not there. No, this is there, but there is something that is incomplete. And we said the mistake that we do is to fill that gap, we try to take another object which is incomplete in itself, put it there thinking that now it will become complete. We don't realize that by any number of finite objects, life can never become infinite. My experience of Brahman, where I understand that I am that Brahman which is infinite, that's the only way that I can become fully fulfilled, completely content. That's the only way. There is no other way. So till the time this realization happens, that complete fulfillment and contentment is not there. That is what Samarth Ramdas Swami is saying here. Sada sarvada artha poti purena. Without this realization, one can never become completely satisfied. Or another way of looking at it is, once this realization happens, then nothing more is required. Bhagavan Shri Krishna in 15th chapter at the end he says, Etad buddhva buddhiman syat. One who gets knowledge of this Brahman becomes buddhiman, wise. Kritakrityascha bharata, and he becomes fulfilled, content. This knowledge of Brahman will make everything complete and full. That Brahman is me. This is something that we have to bring to our mind again and again. Okay, are you getting what is he saying? He says this Brahman is like space, all pervasive. When you start to meditate on it, when you start to understand its nature, the cause of samsara, the root of samsara, which is ignorance, is destroyed. When the ignorance is destroyed, the samsara also cannot exist. When that ignorance is destroyed, when you have direct experience of that Brahman, you cannot have now anymore the identification with body, etc. Identification with not self cannot be there. And in that state of realization, you become completely fulfilled. Not any time before that. There always remains some kind of incompleteness till we get this complete Brahman. Till we understand that I am that Brahman who is complete, incompleteness will always be there. Clear? This is what he is trying to tell. Now what? Continues. What? Veji, last class towards the end you asked one question you have not answered. I think you forgot. What? What question? Okay, let me repeat. No, anyways you don't remember anything, so let me repeat. What? Earlier 2 verses back, Samarth Ramdas Swami said that you cannot have any example for the self. Self is anupama, you cannot give any upama to it. And then 2 verses later, he gives the upama of space, example of space to explain the self. He says the self is like space, all pervasive, and not once, he says it twice. Already in 195, Nabhache parivyapaku janataisa. Again in 197, Nabha sarikhe rupaya ragavache. So at one point you are telling that the self cannot have any example. Immediately you give one example that self is like space, all pervasive. Now what? Now he negates that example also and says, actually speaking, self is not even like space. Why? Why do you say like this? He explains. Next verse, let us see. Verse 198. Nabhe vyapile sarva srishti sa ahe Raghu nayaka upama te nasahe Duje vinajo tochitoha swabhave Taya vyapaku vyartha kaise mhanave. Jai Jai Raghuveer Samartha. Nabhe vyapile sarva srishti sahe. Nabha, space, vyapile, has pervaded sarva srishti, the entire world. Space has pervaded the entire world. I agree, accept. I completely accept. Why? Because in the creation, first thing that comes up is space. From space comes air, from air comes fire, from fire comes water, from water comes earth. And from these 5 great elements, their subtle aspects and gross aspects, the entire world has come. Now, space being the cause of the remaining 4 elements and therefore space being the cause of the entire world, space has pervaded entire world, no doubt about it. But Raghunayaka upamatena sahe. You can't even use that as an example for Raghunayaka, for Brahman. Why are you saying like this? Because there is space is still a concept. Space is still a concept and Brahman is not a concept. You may give example of space to explain many points. And why do we use the example of space? Number one, to understand that I am not just this body. When I think that I am this, I have limited pervasion. I only pervade only as long as this body pervades. By understanding that I am like space, all pervasive, you are breaking the barrier that I am the body. And therefore, I am only pervading this much part of the universe. I am breaking that barrier, and for that, I am using the example that is given in the Shastra that I am like that space, all pervasive. But if you really see from the standpoint of Brahman, even the example of space cannot be given to Brahman. Why? Because space is caused by Maya. It is a concept. It exists only in the realm of time and space. That is what do you call as, those are the criteria. Time and space are the criteria to measure the entire world. It's a concept. Brahman is not a concept. So in a way, you can say that Brahman even pervades space. In a way. What do you mean by that? Space pervades the entire world, but space does not pervade Maya. Why? Because Maya is the cause of space. An effect can never pervade the cause. The cause pervades the effect, agreed. And by that logic, space pervades the entire world, agreed. But space cannot pervade Maya. Brahman pervades even the Maya. Why? Because Brahman is the adhishthana, substratum of even the Maya. Brahmashraya sattva-rajas tamo gunatmika Maya asti. Maya is Brahmashraya. Brahmashraya, its ashraya, support is Brahman. Brahman is Maya support. So space cannot pervade Maya, but Brahman can even pervade Maya. And therefore, if at all you have to say from that standpoint, space pervades everything, but Brahman pervades even more. So only in order to remove a wrong notion that Brahman is with respect to one Upadhi identified, to break that wrong notion, we say Brahman is all pervasive like space. But we cannot even call Brahman as all pervasive. Why? Because there is nothing called as all other than Brahman. What is all? For Brahman, what is all? It is like saying the rope is there and you are imagining it as snake, and you are then telling me that every single cell of the snake is pervaded by the rope. Yeah, that is all okay when you look at that thing as snake. But when you look at that thing as rope, where is the snake? How can you say that the rope is pervading the snake? There is no snake. Rope alone is. Where is the question of rope being snake pervasive? All pervasive snake. What are you talking? There is no concept of all for rope. There is no concept of all for Brahman. How can you call Brahman as all pervasive? All pervasive technically means what? It pervades everything. What does it pervade? Everything means what? Is there anything other than Brahman? There is nothing. So technically even the word all pervasive cannot be used for Brahman. Yes, we do use that example, but again that example is not to be taken at the ultimate level. The example is only to remove one wrong notion. Duje vinajo. When you give up all these wrong notions, all the duality, what remains? Toha swabhave, tochi toha swabhave. That is this Brahman. Taya vyapaku vyartha kaise manaave. And how can I call that as all pervasive? Vyartha. It is an vyartha. Vyartha means useless adjective. To call Brahman as vyapaka, vyapaka means all pervasive. Samarth Ramdas Swami says it is a useless adjective. Why are you calling it as useless adjective? Because for vyapaka, it pervades everything, means everything should exist. That it has to pervade. There is nothing other than Brahman. What will Brahman pervade? Vedji, please now don't confuse. Please give one answer. Okay, what is the question? Is Brahman all pervasive or not all pervasive? Give one answer. But I can't give one answer. Why can't you give one answer? That is because I don't know from which angle you are asking the question. If you experience the world, if you think there exists all, then Brahman is all pervasive. From the standpoint of the world, Brahman is all pervasive. But from the standpoint of Brahman, it is not even all pervasive. Why? Because there is nothing called as all for Brahman to pervade. Something should exist for it to pervade. No. There is nothing other than it that pervades. Then how can you call it all pervasive? Are you understanding? You can call me father when I have son. When I do not have son, how can you call me father? You understand this simple logic? The same logic applies for Brahman. You can call Brahman as all pervasive when you see all. When you see that there is something other than Brahman, then you can say, yes, Brahman pervades everything that you see. But you ask from the standpoint of that Brahman itself, you cannot call it as all pervasive because there exists nothing other than it. Therefore, even this example of space cannot be used. Please don't get angry on the scriptures. What is this? No, they are using example and then denying that example later on. Yeah, that is the methodology. What to do? Because if they do not give examples, we will not even understand anything. So using the example, what scriptures or what the Guru tries to do is, it tries to raise our understanding. Once your understanding is raised, he says, now drop the example. Drop the example. Why? Because with that example, you cannot go further. That's why Gurudev used to give very beautiful analogy that always works. Another example, you see. What is the example now? The example to explain why examples are given and how long example should be used. What is that example? The example is that of pole vault. That high jump competition, somebody runs with the pole, you must have seen, and then they put that pole and then they lift themselves up and then they drop the pole and then they fall. Have you seen or not? He says what scriptures are trying to do is, they give you that pole, whether you call it as example, whether you call it Adhyaropa, Pavada Prakriya, whether you call the description of Brahman, Neti, Neti, Mahavakya, whatever you want to call, all that is pole. Using that pole, you raise yourself to that level of Brahman. Then what? Drop the pole. You can't say, no, I am going to carry that pole next side. You won't go then. If you want to carry the pole, you have to remain on this side. You can't go on the other side with the pole. Examples, explanations are for us to be raised to that level. They are not for us to see Brahman. They are not for us to understand Brahman. They are not. Why? Because Brahman cannot be understood. They are only there so that we are raised to a particular level from where we can drop all these things. The Shastras say, Yena tyajasi tat tyaja. That using which you are giving up everything, ultimately you have to give up that also. Yes, but you use that. Why? So that you can give up everything else. When you go for trekking sometimes, especially in the mountains which are not very popular and therefore not proper roads etc. are there, you have to go through jungle. What most of the times what you do is you take a big stick. The stick is to clear your road, because there will be so many twigs and so many branches etc. will be hanging and will be coming. So you use all that to remove all of them. And then when you finish the trekking, you drop the stick. You don't carry that stick further. You use that stick to clear off other sticks. When you finish that, you drop that stick also and walk. But Veji, if we have to finally drop the stick, why to take the stick? Then you won't be able to reach there. That pole, if it is not there, how will you reach that height? So it is not right to say that, oh, if I have to drop the pole, let me not use the pole from the beginning. No, you have to use the pole. You have to use the pole, raise yourself to a level and then drop the pole. In the same way, take examples, understand the examples, raise your understanding, then drop the examples. Each example in Vedanta is like this. Okay? Therefore, though he is giving the example of space, he clarifies that that is not the ultimate example. Even that has to be dropped. Okay? Continues. Last verse in this context. Verse 199. Let us see. Ati jirna vistirna te rupa ahe, tethe tarka samparka tohi na sahe, अति गूढ़ते दृढ़ तत्काल सोपे, दुजे वीणजे खूण स्वामी प्रतापे, जय जय रघुवीर समर्थ. He says this Brahman is ati jirna, extremely ancient. Jirna here doesn't mean dilapidated, it means ancient. Ati jirna, it is extremely ancient. Vistirnate rupa hai, and endlessly spread, infinite is the nature of this Brahman. Basically what he is trying to tell is, he is trying to tell that Brahman doesn't have any kind of limitation in time or space. When you say ancient, you have broken the limitation of time. And by calling it Vistirna, endless, you have broken the limitation of space. The entire world exists on time and space, no? That is the major of everything. Brahman is ancient, means not limited by time, and Vistirna, endless, means not limited by space. Tethe tarka samparka tohi na sahe, you cannot have any kind of logic there. You cannot have any example there. You cannot have any explanation there. Ati gudha, it's extremely hidden. Te dridha, though it is hidden, yet it is very firm, very strong. And now he says most beautiful thing. He says, tatkala sope. How much time will it take to realize this Brahman? Tatkala, at that very moment. One moment is sufficient. When? Duje Veena Khuna Swami Pratape. When that Duje Veena Khuna, when that oneness which is without any duality, Khuna, is indicated, Swami Pratape, by the grace of Guru. When by Guru's grace that one Brahman is revealed, at that very moment it can be released. It can be realized. How long will it take for me to realize Brahman? A moment. A moment it will take. Are you getting? There is one very beautiful quote of Gurudev. I love this quote very much. He says about the spiritual life, he says, the journey is long and alone you have to walk. On the way, serve all with love and devotion, and we shall meet one day. For that blissful moment, I shall wait. This is in connection with somebody who had asked the question to Gurudev, have you realized? Earlier also I think I had told you this. If you say yes, I have realized, it will be wrong because Brahman cannot be realized. If you say no, I have not realized, it will be untruth. So the beautiful answer Gurudev gave was, I am just at the doorstep of realization, waiting for all of you to join so that we can enter together. And there he says, journey is long. Why it appears to be long? It is not actually long. It appears to be long because we have dug our own grave and we are hiding there. So to come out of it takes time. Alone you have to walk. You can't expect that, oh I have a great guru, so guru will do everything for me. No, alone I have to walk. But while walking, serve everyone with love and devotion. And we shall meet. For that blissful moment, you see, it only takes a moment for realization. And Samarth Ramdas Swami says here, it will take a moment when you have the grace of Guru and when you put your best effort, that the grace flows completely, and in a moment realization will happen. Never we should say that, oh Vijay, I have lived a long life and now I don't know how many years I have left and therefore I don't think realization is possible. Realization takes a moment. Do you have a moment to live or not? Yes, then realization is possible. Never ever say that realization is not possible because I have become old. Why? Because realization only takes one moment. Bhagavan Shri Krishna says in Gita that even at the last moment of life, if somebody realizes, still that is considered realization. Yesha brahmi sthiti partha nainam prapya vimuhyati stitvasyam antakalepi brahma nirvanam rachyati. Last verse of 2nd chapter, he says this. Stitvasyam antakalepi. At that last moment before you die also, if you realize, brahma nirvanam rachyati, you get liberated. It takes only a moment. For that moment to happen, it may look like it is taking long time. Don't worry. Don't ever worry. It will just take a moment. Okay? That is what he says. Now, that direct experience of reality, how is it? He is explaining in next two verses. Let us see. Verse 200. कळे आकळे रूपते ज्ञान होता तेथे आटली सर्वसाक्षी अवस्था मना उन्मनी शब्द कुंठित राहे तोरे तोचितो राम सर्वत्र पाहे. जय जय रघुवीर समर्थ. कळे आकळे रूपते ज्ञान होता. When that moment of realization happens, when self knowledge dawns, Jnana hota, when that Atma-jnana takes place, that Atma-jnana removes Ajnana and you get realization. Kale akale rupa, you see the nature of yourself. Not with the eyes, not with the mind, not with the intellect, but intrinsically as your own self. Just as we say, for me to know I exist, what is required? Do you think outer light or the eyes or the mind is required for me to know I exist? No. I know I exist. Even if there is no light, even if there is no mind, I know I exist. Why? Because I exist, Sat, I know Chit is always there. Sat Chit being the nature of the self, I don't need any outer agency, any outer equipment to know the self. I don't need senses, I don't need the mind, I don't need the intellect. Tethe atali sarva sakshi avastha, and therefore all kinds of notions, even of being the witness of everything, that notion also has ceased. Atali. Mana unmani, mind has become no mind. शब्द कुंठित राहे. Words have frozen. See how he is describing that state of realization. That when you get that realization, when you get the self-knowledge, when the self-knowledge comes and destroys ignorance, you realize that Brahman. Using what? Using no other outer equipment. It's an intrinsic experience. Direct experience, realization of the self. Aparoksha anubhuti. For that, no notion of being a witness also is there. Mind has become no mind. Words have frozen. Tore to chito Rama sarvatra pahe. And once you get this knowledge, once you get this realization, then that Rama, that Brahman alone is seen everywhere. Actually, when you say that Brahman is alone is seen everywhere, means you don't see everything. You only see Brahman. See how the words are. When we hear the word, no, you will see Brahman everywhere, which will immediately we mean what? Brahman, 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 Brahman. Arey idiot, if you see Brahman everywhere means what? You will not see everything. You will only see Brahman. Not as different Brahman. Oh, there are 200 Brahman attending this class. Not like that. Brahman alone will be experienced. That's what it means. That is the state of realization. Continues, last verse for today. Let us see. 201. Kada olakhi maji duje disena mani manasi dvaita kahi vasena bahuta disa pali bhet jali videhi pane sarvakaya nivali. Jai Jai Raghuveer Samartha. He says, Kada olakhi maje duje disena. When you recognize that Brahman as your own self, duje disena, you don't see anything else. You don't have any perception of duality. Mani manasi dvaita kahi vasena. Why? Because mind has become Brahman. Mind cannot have any duality anymore. Earlier, mind was the cause of all the duality to appear. Mind was creating the notion that I am this body and therefore all other bodies are different from me. When that mind itself has become no mind, when mind has become Brahman, no Dvaita can exist. He says, Bahuta disa apali bheta jali. He says, oh ho ho, after long time we have met. Whom? We have met ourselves. Bahuta disa, after many days, apali bheta jali, we have met ourselves. Videhi pane sarvakaya nivali. And then the identification with body is over and therefore all the modifications etc. quieten. This is what in other terms is called as Jivanmukti avastha. Jivanmukti avastha, don't think that avastha means state, means that which will change. No, not that kind of avastha. This is Jivanmukti, this is the liberation while living. Where while living itself you have experience of no body, no mind, no intellect. You go beyond. Yes, body may continue to exist for other people to see. You will have no experience of it. You will not see your body different from Brahman. You will not see any other body different from Brahman. You will not see anything other than Brahman. This is the ultimate liberation. You call it Jivanmukti, you call it Videhamukti, that's okay. You call it liberation while living or liberation at the fall of body. Why? Because at the moment of realization, for me, body has stopped to exist. When for others the body will fall, they will call it as Videhamukti. For me, it will not even make any difference. Brahmavid Brahmaiva bhavati. The knower of Brahman becomes Brahman at that very moment. So following a very standard methodology, Samarth Ramdas Swami is concluding the text with the explanation of Mukti. In any text of Vedanta, it starts with the qualities that the student must have and what is the path that the student must take. Then it has to explain the Saguna Brahma, Nirguna Brahma, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga. He has done all that and now he has explained the last topic of Mukti. Jivanmukti Videhamukti. Now, in the last 4 verses, we see that he concludes the entire text. Okay? Those 4 verses we will see in the next class, which will be the last class for Manache Shlok. Only 4 verses are remaining. Okay? We will see in the next class how he concludes. Okay? In the next class, I will tell you what will happen to class after this. VHG Manache Shlok is getting over. What is the next text? I will tell you. Next class, I will tell you. All right. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.